Early on in my business, I would come in with a list of things to do. I would delegate some and do the rest. And it ended up stopping my growth. Hello, my friend. Does this sound familiar? I did this for years, and I became the bottleneck to my leadership. If you're not familiar with that term bottleneck, it's basically in a bottle, there's this narrowing which stops the liquid from coming out. And that stops it from really pouring out too fast. And it's a good thing when you're drinking a root beer. It's not a great thing when you're leading an organization. If you've been leading for a while and all you've been doing is delegating, you are a gigantic bottleneck. When I opened my second restaurant, I realized how big of a problem I had with this, because I was still trying to delegate everything and run two places. This is like newsflash, by the way, you can't be in two places at once. And so I'd be at my one location and I would delegate, and then I'd go to the other location, delegate, and back and forth, squirrel dodging tires, and then exhausted at the end of the day. And these people I'm leading, come on, just get a clue. And really it was, come on, Zach, get a clue. See, delegating is an important level of leadership, but there's one step further that will take your leadership to a whole new level. And that is actually developing the people to think for themselves. See, developing and delegating are two separate things altogether. If you just delegate when you try to take a day off, the people you lead will call you because you haven't taught them to think for themselves. So how do we develop? We have to establish a few things. See, you want to create banks of a river for them to think. The first one is vision. What is the vision for the things you lead? And can the people you're leading recite back the vision and why it matters? At my restaurant, we exist for two reasons. It can all be boiled down to our vision of two things. One, we foster a place for connection, because connection happens around food. Two, we develop leaders that change the community. Those are my overriding vision. The people I lead know that, and those are the banks of the river. So when they're thinking about decisions to make, does it match around creating an environment of connection? And does it match developing leaders, right? If we're not developing people, I can't develop leaders. I know that sounds extremely simple. It is extremely simple. Cast a vision, and that'll help create some banks. The next thing you want to establish with the people you're leading is, what are the values of your company or your organization or your life group, even your family? Like, what are the values? See, vision guides and where we're going. Values kind of gives us our operating system. So in my restaurant, safety is a value. Why is safety a value? Because if safety is violated with food and you give bad food to someone, you're not going to be in business. If someone falls out in the lobby because we had a wet floor that we didn't take care of, I'm opening myself up for a lawsuit, right? That is why safety is a value. We have other values, family, to have a profitable and growing profitable business. These are all the values at which guides the company. For you, have you established values? If you don't, you're giving unclear banks to the river, and it's going to make delegating easy, but developing difficult. And so make sure you establish through vision and through values banks at which they make decisions. Because remember, you're teaching a thinker, not a doer. All right, the next step is breaking down everything to science and art. Things are much more complicated than we make them. When you've been doing something a long time, you have so much nuance wrapped around what you're doing that you might not be aware of. In my restaurant, we did this with every task within the restaurant, not even the managerial side. just the worker bee side. And frankly, it was exhausting. It took weeks. We developed a binder like that. So what do I mean by science and art? Science. It can be boiled down to very specific things. So in my restaurant, which is a pizza restaurant, there's a position called lead. This person is the one that gets the skin, the pizza, and sauces it. Like, first they need to read the ticket. Then they need to see what skin they need. Then they need to see whether it's baked or taken baked. Then they need to sauce the pizza. Like, that's all different science things. We have a list saying how much sauce goes on the pizza, how much cheese goes on it, and how they spread it out. Because I don't know if you've eaten a pizza made by an amateur, and don't tell me that you make the best homemade pizza. You don't. The other places make it better. Just saying. Or the frozen pizza at the store. Golly, only sissies buy frozen pizza. Okay, pizza rant over. But when someone doesn't know how to sauce a pizza, they do like these rivers and valleys where they're not holding the ladle correctly. And so some of the pizza has a lot of sauce. The rest of the pizza has no sauce. It's very hard to actually do. And so we broke it down to the science. Here's how you hold the ladle. Here's how much pressure to put down. But there's also art to it. Art, it's things that can't be boiled down to this is how much sauce. Art is, hey, when do you stop doing what you're doing and greet the customer? Oh, how does the lead set the environment for the whole restaurant? Like, environment is spread through communication. And we break it down to 7:45, 48. And so if someone comes in a bad mood and they're grumbly, we are like, check your 7:45 and 48 at the door and get a new 7:45, 48. What do I mean by that? In communication, 7% only, just 7% is the words we use. 45% is the tone of voice. And 48% is the body language. Like, if I was like, I love you, that does not really communicate, I love you. Right? Because my 45 and 48 did not match the 7. Words matter. So does tone of voice. And so does our body language. It all communicates something. And so we've taught through science and art, like breaking it down. Like, hey, when you have a scowl on your face, other people scowl back. Hey, when you have a smile on your face, other people smile back. Like, this is teaching. Might sound basic to you if you know these things, but if you don't, it can be like mind-blowing for some of the people that I'm leading. Like, oh, everyone's treating me a certain way because of how I'm presenting myself. Yes. Yeah, so science and art, have you breaking it down. And here's some tips. So you can break it down with a binder, like I did, like literally went task by task. You can also do video where you're recording yourself doing these tasks and you explain what you're doing. This can be great for more complicated things. And you're giving them what you want, that you want them to do. And each time you have a roadblock within your company where you're developing people, where you're leading them and developing them, and then you leave and it doesn't go that way, find out where the breakdown was so that you can create a system for the future. Delegating is just giving the list. Developing is teaching the skills behind, giving them all the tools and equipment, and then letting them go. Here's the next step. You're going to revisit and coach. Developing moves you from the driver's seat to the passenger coach seat. And I coach my crew through some questions. And so one of the things I ask every week is, what did you create and what did you allow this last week? And we do this because we believe in extreme ownership for leadership. And that's what we're teaching them. My business, their life even, we've taught, is a combination of what they've created and what they've allowed. See, we create a lot of things. Like, look at what you've done today. If you've prepared a meal, you created that. If you didn't eat well at the meal and you ate a bunch of sugar and junk, you created that too. Right? We also allow things. So how people treat me, if I just allow that on a daily basis, if I continue in relationship with them, if I never confront that thing, I've allowed that to be what it is. As a leader, I had to learn this early on, where I allowed a lot of behavior that spread throughout my crew, and I didn't understand why everyone started to act a certain way. It was because it was allowed. The more I allowed the behavior, the more it went on. And so when we have behavior, especially when it's against our values, when it's against our vision, they get warned, they get written up, and then they get removed. Luckily, it's not something I have to do regularly, but that's because we don't allow it. All right, here's the next thing. We check in with the people we lead daily when they first start, and it becomes less frequent the more we work together. But here's how it goes. I ask 2 questions when someone starts at the end of the day. Hey, what went well today today? What went well? What did you think you did well? And then where do you think you need to work? What needs improvement? What needs to be worked on? What I am gauging here is I am gauging with the person I'm leading their awareness level. And it rarely matches reality. I've found when I bring people on, they either are optimistic about how they're doing and they think they're way better than they are, or, and this is more often, they're harder on themselves than what they actually should be. And so it gauges me. Where's their awareness? How am I communicating? What's going on there? And it gives me a lot of information. Please ask your people this question. It's really helpful. And then I ask a follow-up. I say, hey, can I give you some feedback? Don't ask that question unless you're prepared to not give them feedback if they tell you no. Sometimes as leaders, we ask questions we really don't want the answer to. But this one, I do want them. I want to, if they don't trust me yet, that gives me a gauge. If they don't trust me yet, they're going to tell me no. And that has happened. But if they give me permission, then you step into it. I said, hey, I'd like to share with you, I think you're right on with what you said you did well. Or if you thought they were off, tell them. And then say, hey, here's where I think you did well. And find something. There is always something. If you're a critical leader and you cannot find something they did well, that is an area you need to work on. People gravitate more towards where you praise them than where you critique them. And then you need to gauge. Then the next question is, here's where I think you need to work. This is an area I think you need to improve. And if they were right on with their assessment, which does happen once in a while, let them know. You don't need to give them further feedback. Yeah, I think you did well there. And I do think you need to work on where you're aware, right? Again, we're teaching people extreme ownership, which to me is the only form of leadership. When you're doing this process, it really helps if your vision and their vision can connect. And this is not something that is complicated, but that doesn't mean it's easy. If you want help with that, this video will really help you right here. God bless you as you develop people that you lead.